And now I have the opportunity to introduce Serena Arnold. As I mentioned, she was our Tech Women of the Year award winner for last year's luncheon. Really excited about her story that she's going to share with us today. So Serena, welcome.
Thank you so much. Is my mic on? Can people hear me?
Yep.
Yay! Okay, good. Excellent. So I've come here today to talk about something that I've never talked about before. This is a completely new topic to me. And so how to be a bad boss, employee, parent, partner, and how to stop. So the one thing I want to say is that knowing nothing about any of you in the room, I know that you have customers, right? So now a lot of you have the kind of customers that are paying you for a service or for software or for a product. But you have customers that you don't know about. Your boss is a customer. Your direct reports are a customer. Your kids are a customer. Your spouse is a customer. Even you are your own customer, okay? And I want to make sure that we talk about these because we spend a lot of time with our direct people, our direct customers. We spend over 40 hours a week with them, but it's everybody else that we don't spend that much time with. When you look at how you treat your customers, you bend over backwards for them. You want to make sure they're happy. Are they satisfied? What more can I do for you? Did your partner treat you that way? What would happen if your spouse treated you like a customer? What would be different? What would happen if you treated your spouse like a customer or your kids like a customer? Okay? One hard truth that I've learned over the years is that I don't learn things very well, actually. My brother, who's 3 years younger than me, learned to ride a bike before I did. That's embarrassing. It took me months to learn how to drive a stick shift. I don't learn very well. And so I always try to find opportunities to better myself. I really like coming to networking events like this. I read books, I listen to podcasts. I really do everything I can to improve myself. And I keep a notebook. And I write down things in this notebook that I think are really important to me. Sometimes they're catchy one-liners. Sometimes they're concepts that are just really mind-blowing or put things into perspective. And I've been compiling this notebook for a couple of years now. And as I was looking through thinking about this talk, there were sort of a couple themes that emerged. And I realized that I want to talk about building relationships and how you treat customers and who your customers really are. And so what I found is that there are basically seven skill sets that I think are really, really important for everybody to sort of hone in on and think about in their daily relationships. So I'm going to do this through some interesting stories, maybe some uncomfortable moments. So let's dive in here and see what happens. So first and foremost, rule number one, be consistent and be intentional. It's really, really easy to give mixed signals to people. Priorities change, our priorities change, the people we work with, their priorities change. Some of us have customers that we deal with that aren't really great, but you have to put on the facade and the smile and deal with them, right? And believe it or not, these are all things that can actually lead us to being inconsistent. I once worked for a team, my history is as a meteorologist, where we had to put out a weather report. And this was a report that talked about a regional, large-scale weather event of some sort and how it was going to impact those around us. And the process for this was that it was written by a meteorologist, and then they sent it to another meteorologist to have their review. It was then sent to somebody in marketing to make sure that it was all able to be understood and they got it. And then went on to someone who was customer-facing and they reviewed it. So we went through all these checks and balances. It got sent out to the customer. CEO also saw it. And there was a typo, something simple, like an A instead of the, really, really minor. And he came back to that meteorologist and said, this is terrible, you can't do this, this is our reputation. And he, ripped the guy a new one, unfortunately. Not, whether he was right or wrong, we can judge that later. But this is what happened. Literally the next day, after it was decided after that mistake that they were going to do a few, add another round of checks, they said, you know what, the CEO came to this meteorologist and said, we need a weather report, like a specific one catered to someone on the board of trustees. So if you could compile this and send it over to me to send to them, that would be great. So the meteorologist literally has the sweat on their head and the anxiety from the day before. So he writes the weather report, sends it to another meteorologist to take a look at it. It goes to the same marketing person that they review it. It goes to a customer service manager, and it goes to another manager as well, because there's these additional checks. 90 minutes later, the CEO contacts this person. Says, where's my report? He says, oh, I'm still working on it. Just going through all the checks, and he says, well, I would have rather had it like fast than accurate. That's not consistent. Not even consistent, not even a little bit. Okay, this is a real story. This is, actual stuff that happens out there. So you don't want to be the pot calling the kettle black, as they say, right? You don't want to be, lectured from someone about how you ate half a box of Girl Scout cookies from someone who literally finished a box of Sour Patch Kids. Literally, those come in boxes, by the way, very large boxes, right? So this is the stuff that you don't want to do. The other thing is, inconsistent, I like to tell the truth, okay? And I really try to focus on the truth in my family as well. And I struggle with this sometimes with my kids, okay? So, she's 3 years old, this is my oldest daughter. I was feeding her some olives one night. And they had the pits in them still. Why we purchased those, I don't know. But I'm giving them to her and trying to clean them up and hand them to her. And I have to go change the laundry. And I come back in, and she's got that look on her face, right? She's kind of hands behind her, smirking. What'd you do? Did you eat an olive? Yeah. So right away, I'm like, okay, good, she swallowed a pit. This is going to be awesome. What'd you do with it? Where's the pit? She's like, I spit it on the floor over there. Okay. So I walk over and I look, and she did. There was the pit. She spit it on the floor right there next to the refrigerator. And I remember thinking to myself, well, this is quite the conundrum, because she didn't listen to me. She ate the olive when I told her not to, but she told me the truth. I can't go put her in timeout right now and have her think that telling the truth puts her in timeout, that telling the truth is what gets her in trouble. It was a really interesting opportunity for me where I had to be very intentional and consistent in my messaging. So we sat down and we talked, and I think what I ended up doing was saying, look, this was the good thing you did. I'm glad you told me the truth, but it was bad you didn't listen to me, so you have to sit in timeout for like 5 seconds, okay? Something to show that that action was still bad, but I needed to reward the truth-telling. So before you respond to somebody, just always make sure you're really trying to be consistent, because really all it takes is one bad instance to tarnish a relationship. So that's number 1. Number 2, give trust. So I really like working with animals, and I've trained everything from like horses and dogs, and trust is a really, really big part of the training process. And when I say give trust, I want you to know that you will be burned by this, okay? Just set that expectation right away. The first time you let a dog off the leash after your obedience classes, they are gonna take off. They are out of there, okay? But, and you're gonna wanna strangle this dog, okay? I've done this, I've been this person, okay? I remember this very clearly at a large park, took the dog off the leash, and they went sprinting away, and they dive, and I'm like ducking, and they're dodging, and I'm diving, and it's just like this chaotic mess, and the dog comes back to me finally, and all I want to do is spring, and just, oh, too much noise here. I just want to, that's the anger. So, I want to get this dog and wring his neck, and I can't, because the dog came back. I gave the trust. I can't do that. Instead, I had to, praise the dog like crazy, yo, good puppy, I'm so glad you came back. As I'm like, up there trying to catch my breath after chasing this dog. And so the next time I did it, maybe I was a little smarter and had like a Big Mac in my hand and let him off the leash. I'm like, oh, this? You want this? Oh, okay. They don't take off running as much, right? So trust needs to be earned, and you have to empower people. And so in order to do that, you're going to be having to give trust. As we all get dizzy from the dog that's running by here. You're going to have to trust people sooner than you're going to want to do that. And you will be burned by it, but you need to find the opportunities where the consequences are actually quite minimal. So, kind of like letting the puppy off the leash, what are you going to do to build that trust? So, my 3-year-old came to me one day, and she said, Mommy, I want to set the table. And I was like, ooh, cool, okay. You've never set the table before. This is going to go swimmingly. And so I'm working on working on dinner, and she sets the table, and she puts like 3 forks and 2 spoons for everybody. I think the baby had a steak knife on their tray or something like that. Just things where you're like, oh man. But I knew there wasn't any major opportunity for failure there. There wasn't going to be a catastrophic opportunity to do something bad. It's not like I'm giving her the keys to my car and saying go for a joyride. It's setting the table, right? So these are the opportunities you need to look for in order to test people, because worst case scenario, they do exactly what you expect them to. Best case scenario, they surprise you. They do the right thing. And you can have trust sooner. You can trust them sooner. And in doing so, you're empowering them, you're giving them confidence, you're also delegating. You're getting a few things off your plate, right? So even though my 3-year-old didn't really set the table the way it should have been done, she did it and empowered her. And my husband walked in the door and she was like, "Daddy, Daddy, I set the table, look at what I did, isn't it so great?" And it was so exciting. She was so confident. She was so excited. She was so happy about what she did. There's ways this works at the office too. If you have junior employees, give them an opportunity to succeed, to try to do something like that. If they bring a problem to you, have them coordinate the meeting to fix it. Have them set the agenda. Have them figure out who needs to be there based upon that agenda. Have them figure out if people are going to be remote and how scheduling is going to work in screen shares and all that. Worst case, that happens, kind of a blumbling, crazy mess. But you'll probably still get through it. That's the worst case scenario. Best case scenario is I bet they rock it. I bet they do an awesome job. I bet they come up with great solutions, and also by them understanding how you fix these, they're going to be more bought into the solution. They're going to have pride of ownership. They're going to be super happy by having these opportunities. So give trust, because it really helps to cultivate strong relationships. Third, be creative and have an open mind. Now, I know one size doesn't fit all. No two people should be treated the same. No two customers should be treated exactly the same. There's a lot of self-assessments out there, like DISC assessments or the Enneagram assessments, that help you understand your personality. By personality, what we mean is what drives you, what motivates you, how do you like to be rewarded. All of these things are really important in understanding how people function. And too often we get caught up in the golden rule. Treat others the way that you want to be treated. This sounds great. This applies to being kind to others. But there's a major typo here. The truth of the matter is we need to treat other people the way they want to be treated. We are all very different. Some of us want to be praised by standing up in front of a meeting and having, our boss recognize us in front of our peers. Some people want an Amazon gift card. Some people want a hug, a handshake, something like that, right? It kind of goes back to those love languages. Anyone here is familiar with the love languages, right? Some people really love, words of affirmation. Some people like to have gifts. Everybody's all different. So if you don't know where everybody else is, you're not going to be able to be creative in those ways that you help them. And you need to know those assessments and how people operate. Because if I'm one type and I'm rewarding everybody else in that same way, it's actually going to go over their heads. They're not going to really see it. They're not going to get it. So, once you know these differences, okay, you can start to be creative and you can have a little bit of fun. So, I have a customer at our organization that we had some rough patches. I mean, I can admit it. We did some things that weren't really great for a lot of different reasons. There were a lot of hiccups in the relationship. And this was a customer that kept coming to me and saying, "I just feel like we're not clicking. I just feel like we're not getting a fresh start here. I really wish we could just be doing this all a little bit differently and better. We just don't feel good about it." Now, we're in the technology, area. This is also sort of a technology customer. And here they are talking about their feelings. So right away, I understand what they're going to need in order to feel better about this. I can put in processes and procedures and all that, and I've done it, but that's not what they're going to respond to, talking about their feelings so much. So instead, when they came to me and said, "We just want a fresh start," we sent them a box of lemons with cups and a juicer and a card with instructions for lemonade. And we said, "We too want a fresh start. And we want to make lemonade out of lemons. We're going to keep working for you on this. We're going to do a great job, and we're sorry for what's happened in the past." You should have seen the emails I got. It was so exciting. I got like little goosebumps thinking back about it because it was so rewarding. It was so exciting to see how much they loved it. Now I need to go back to my other rules, and I need to remain consistent and intentional, because if I do that and let everything else fall by the wayside, I'm obviously not going to be doing a great job. But you have to be creative, and this was a really, really interesting way to help sort of build and mend that relationship when it needed it. And I find that my creativity at home is kind of tested like nowhere else. Our daughters love bedtime stories, like any of us who have kids, they do. But they don't like the stories just from the book. Oh no, they want like improv stories, okay? So our oldest daughter, she loves to tell us exactly what she wants. She'll be like, "Mommy, tell me a story about a bad fox who lives in the woods." And so I'm like, "Okay, Little Red Riding Hood, take out the wolf, put in a fox, bada bing, bada boom, I got it, right? And every once in a while, this kid throws me for such a loop. She'll be like, Mommy, I want a story about an octopus. Okay, sweetie, we could do that. And a fish. Oh, okay, yeah. Octopus and fish, they live in the ocean, we can do that. And there's a cloud, Mommy. The clouds above the ocean, you know, I'm putting this together in my head. Okay, I could do that. And they meet a squirrel and he's eating kohlrabi. And I'm like, how do you know what kohlrabi is? Where does a kid get? I don't, you know? And so you really have to dig into that creativity and try to figure out how you're going to do this. So I realize that we've got like the left brain, right brain people. Not everybody's going to be able to flex that creative muscle. So if you can't, how do you overcome this, right? And how you do it is by asking why. And you ask why, and you ask why again. Now time it right, otherwise you're going to get really, really annoying to the people that you're asking this to. But when you do this, you're going to get some surprising answers. If you've got a customer that is purchasing your product and the adoption is lower than you want to see, you need to start asking them why, okay? And why again? And why another time? Keep going back and asking this information, because frequently when you do, and I know he's very distracting, so I'm going to go ahead and move off that. When you do, you're going to end up getting to like a heart-to-heart conversation about what's happening. And I'm going to read this because these are actual quotes I've had from customers. So you're going through why and why again. At the end of the conversation goes, and we just had a reorg, so the person is new, and they don't know anything about the system, and they want me to give me a report on this metric, and they don't realize that it doesn't give this metric, and it doesn't make any sense, and I'm working on all these other tasks. So what's the real problem? Is the real problem like product adoption, or is the real problem something that's going on internal to that organization? By understanding that and asking why, now I can say, you know what, let me reach out to your manager. Let me go out and take them out to lunch, have coffee with them, sit down and talk about what the software does. You know, let me set the record straight with them. Let me sort of help you. And by doing that, you're not addressing a symptom of the problem, you're actually going to be addressing the actual problem. So be creative. It's very, very helpful. Number 4, share your failures. This is where it's going to get really good and uncomfortable here. This is why I'm here. It's the whole reason that I'm talking to everybody today. And we all have our stories of our history and our past, right? So we all know when we sit down at a job interview, tell me about yourself. You've got your glowing review of yourself. It's the same one you tell at parties, right? But this story is majorly flawed in that it doesn't highlight all of the work that it took to get there and everything that you overcame, and it sets an unrealistic expectation of success. Unless people realize all the struggle and failure that comes with it, it's actually not going to be seen in the right light. One of my absolute favorite quotes is, to paint the picture of life, you need to use a few dark colors. Because if everything is light and everything is bright, you don't see the contrast, you don't see the depth. Okay? The story about the guy who goes through his life and does everything pretty well and everything ends out all right is a terrible story. It's boring and it's lousy, right? It's not interesting. We love the underdog story. We love having more information, right? So one of the things to remember is that success is a journey. It's not a destination. We can define failure so quickly and easily, and boom, that was the moment where I failed. It's a lot harder to do that with success. So hardship makes us better. Problems are a training ground. These are the things that we have to remember. So like that puppy off the leash, you have to give someone that opportunity, you know, to run the meeting. They have to learn by doing wrong. You know, kids only learn to walk by falling over and over and over again. Hardship used to be a really necessary part of refinement, and today people view it as bad. You know, don't show your weaknesses. You know, don't let them see you sweat. And in a social media world, I tell you what, it really is actually only getting worse and worse and worse. So I really like sharing pictures of food that I make on social media. I'm a fairly good cook, okay? But I have also burned hard-boiled eggs, okay? Did you know you could do this? You could do this, all right? And so in doing so, if I don't share this picture on my social media as well, it's setting an unrealistic expectation of what I'm capable of. Actually, someone who burns hard-boiled eggs can also make some pretty awesome food too. And it's because we're always subconsciously comparing ourselves to what we're seeing around us and in social media. So as a leader, as an employee, as a parent, I think it's really, really, really important to share those fail stories. It sets the right expectations. It shows that you had hardship. It shows how you overcame it. You're able to share your struggles, how you felt during those struggles and during those times. And it's a story that everyone, I think, really, really needs to hear. There's a story I know about someone who did not do very well in school. This person followed their dreams and got their first internship in the field that they had always wanted to study, and absolutely hated it, and they had to reevaluate their entire career path. Afterwards, they went to a second internship where they actually didn't have the programming skills to do the work needed, and weren't able to complete the internship as expected. First job out of college, didn't think was really going anywhere, and they left, and immediately after they were bought by a major electronics company. After that, they went for a sort of a stepping stone of a job, which ended up lasting 6 years, which was a nice source of stability through a divorce, which then led to this person moving all the way across the country to a new area, getting a new job, knowing not a single person in the state that they lived in. They got out there and things went pretty good, and a couple years into it, they had been living in a home for a couple of years, just renting it, and were given 30 days to move. A couple weeks later, we're told that they were no longer needed at that position. And a week later, their dog and closest partner for the past several years through all of that was diagnosed with terminal cancer. After that, without a dog, with no job, and no home, found another opportunity 6 months later, and thought it was a good opportunity, and 30 days into it, had a VP put a letter in their file over a really simple and silly sort of miscommunication. This is my story. Nobody talks about these things. I'm sharing a lot of these details today publicly for the very first time because I think it's that important, because I truly believe so much that it's important that we share these fail stories. It's really easy to define the failures and keep them internal, but it's not helping anybody, because the truth of the matter is with each of these failures, I got better. Every one of those opportunities was a learning opportunity. I got better. And you know what? I even had this happen when I was getting ready for this talk. I had a situation that happened 7 days, so about a weekish before this talk, where there was a relationship that I was working on that was just going down the toilet, it felt like. And I sat back and I asked myself, I remember at night sitting there going, I've got to talk about this. I've got to talk to other people about building relationships. Who am I to do this? You know, when you have all those negativity and those thoughts coming to your head, who are you to stand up and talk to a crowd of people? You can't even manage this relationship. It's really important to share that because we all have those setbacks. We all have those moments. There's a martial art form out there called Muay Thai where they kick trees, okay? And they do this because they've learned over the years that as they kick the trees, the bone in the shin gets stronger. The way the recalcification of the bone, I don't do bones, okay? The bones get stronger, okay? And so you get cuts and you get bruises and you get all this on your leg as you kick the trees, but it does get stronger. And we do the same with every failure. Every time we end up kicking one of those trees, we are getting stronger. And because of that, you're eventually going to be able to do some pretty awesome things. They literally kick down trees. It's crazy. Okay. So, the fifth rule. And that is pull, don't push. So earlier we talked about how everyone's driven by different things in their life, you know, through the DISC assessments and all that. And once you understand what people are motivated by, you're going to be able to pull through your leadership rather than push people through your leadership. Anyone who has a toddler knows very well how to lead through pulling rather than pushing, okay? Say it is bedtime, it's time for them to go upstairs and to brush their teeth, which they do not want to do, okay? So you have two choices. The first is you can take them kicking and screaming. You're going to brush your teeth right now. Mommy, I don't want to. You drag them up and they're sobbing. You can't even brush their teeth because they're crying so hard. They're getting worked up before bedtime. It's not the ideal situation, right? Or you can pull them into doing this. And you could say, hey, now that you had your dessert, let's go upstairs and brush those sugar bugs off your teeth. So that way you can get into those really soft, cozy jammies you like. We'll tuck you into that blue blanket that you like so much, and we're going to go read Rosie Revere, Engineer. How does that sound? Does that sound good? Do you want to do that? So people who train large animals also know this information. You're not going to make an animal that's 10 times your size do anything it doesn't want to. You know, the horse accepts the saddle because it gets to go places and it gets to run and jump and do all these really fun things. You're not going to change the way someone acts until you change what they believe. And by doing so, you're setting them up for success and you're actually building on these relationships. So a true leader can really lead by pulling rather than pushing. And a leader has nothing to do with a title or with a paycheck, okay? A leader is someone that when they turn around, there's people behind them. Not people that they've pulled, or not people that they've pushed, excuse me. You do want to pull them. We're pulling them, right? Okay. These are people that you can't push them if they're behind you, right? You have to pull them along. And there's some really great corporate examples of this that I'm going to talk about in the next one. But some few ways to help you understand ways that you can pull and push is set the example. Be the change that you want to see in the world. Stand up for what is right, even if you're standing alone. I mean, there are all these, catchy one-liner phrases or whatever, but they're actually really, really helpful in the concept of pulling people along rather than pushing them. So when we get into this next one, I'm going to talk a little bit more about an example here because it sort of applies in multiple locations. Number 6, love, listen, and be positive. Now, research shows that about 90% of people are listening in a conversation only to respond to you. How many people have known that person? Okay? It's 90% of us. It's some of us. Okay? It's a lot of us in this room, actually. And so, we've all been that person or seen that person when you tell the story. They're just waiting. They've got a bigger, better story. They're ready to share it with you. They're not listening. Okay? And we need to listen. We need to love. We need to be kind to each other. Today, we can have very strong opinions. And there's a direct correlation between how mean your opinion is and how far away you are from the person that you have that opinion with. Okay? So think about it. You're walking down the street, and someone walks out of a shop in front of you. And, oh, excuse me, after you, right? Maybe you give the weird, half-smile thing that we all do, okay? It's usually very polite. It's usually very cordial. What happens when they do this in your car? It's a little bit different story, right? It's like, what are you doing? Go! You cut me off. What's wrong with you, you jerk? Or something worse, right? Okay? So we know what that's like. And then if you're on the internet, I bleeping hate him. Look at his stupid, ugly face. I hate him. I really do. Hate his stupid face. Look at them eyes. All I see hate. Stupid Twitter frog emoji. He's so dumb. Look at his small Hulk-looking idiot. I hate his... This is real. Okay? I mean, all I had to do was Google dumb tweets, and this was the first thing that popped up. The further you are away from the people that you're interacting with or responding to, the meaner you get. We have this filter that just completely disappears. So we have to remember that I think the world would be a lot better if we just extended a little bit more kindness to others. Maybe it was Grandpa's first day to see his new grandbaby at the hospital, and that's why he's going really slow on the road. Maybe the person who's going painfully slow through the roundabout just baked a wedding cake for their sister's wedding and then just are terrified it's going to tip over in the back. Maybe the person who didn't put their blinker on just got fired from work and is driving home. We need to assume good intent because it absolutely costs us nothing. Listening to others is also going to provide you really, really valuable insight into how other people are treated, believe it or not. It takes a really uncommon level of self-awareness to not treat other people the way that you're being treated by others. So there's a lot of times where I'll talk with a customer and they go through this crazy rant and it ends with my boss is really pushing me to have this tomorrow, or I just don't have people to help me on my team right now, or ever since we went through that reorg, I just don't have the time for this. These are the people, the customers, that are going to be treating you badly because they're being treated badly. It's the work version of gaslighting. I don't know if anyone's here familiar with gaslighting, but it's when the cheating significant other comes home and blames the other on cheating. It's the addict who blames everyone else on being an addict. There's this weird psychological thing that happens where we blame other people and push onto other people the way that we're being treated about others. So it's really important that you earn other people's trust and you confidence and you listen to them and hear what they have to say, because once again, that's what's going to allow you to solve not just a symptom of the problem, but what the actual problem is. Everybody on the planet really needs kind of like 5 things besides like, the air and, water and food. Everyone wants to be seen, understood, valued, important, and feel like their presence matters. So often we get wrapped up in our own problems and how we're feeling that we don't think about what we're doing to help others in this department. Random acts of kindness are really, really popular here. These are the areas where it can be really helpful. These are the things that we can be doing to help people feel better. We can praise the good choices they make and talk about the good they do rather than always punishing the bad. And I'll tell you right now, a loved for employee and a cared for employee is going to do more for you and your organization than you will ever possibly know. If we look back to 2014, there was a time where all the Market Basket employees went on strike. Now, anytime you see a major retail outlet go, all the employees go on strike, it's because they're fighting for their rights. It's, they're being wronged in some way. These guys went on strike because their CEO was removed by the board. They went on strike for their CEO. This is unheard of. And the reason this happened was because the CEO cared for them. The CEO loved them. The CEO listened. The CEO was positive. When you read reports about what he did, he would go to weddings and he would go to funerals. So it's not loving people in a creepy way or like in an inappropriate way. It's just saying, I care for you. I value you. You're an important part of this organization. And when you do that, when it's that leadership through pulling, when you do that and you care for these people, you say, I've got your back, come with me. When something happens to you, which is an extreme example here, they'll have your back too. Someone who feels loved and trusted is going to do more for you, and you can push them harder to achieve more things than anybody else in the organization. CEO Market Basket didn't lead people in this way, so eventually they would all support him and rally behind him when he lost this opportunity. He just did what was right. He just treated people well. These same people wouldn't leave if you gave them a pay raise to go somewhere else. You could go to 90% of these employees and say, we'll give you $5 grand if you come over to our organization. They'd probably say no, because there's such a huge value today in being cared for and being loved and being supported by your employer. And there's a lot of companies that do. It's not just Market Basket. It's the culture of Chick-fil-A. It's the culture of Southwest. We see this over and over again throughout our culture today. Lastly, we're down to the last one, folks, here. And it's actually self-care. Self-care is really, really important. I realize that's kind of a tall order because I just gave you 6 examples of like, this is what you need to do for everybody else. Now take care of yourself too, right? We already feel that pressure, don't we? Trust me, I totally understand that. But like the airline safety card says, you need to put your mask on first before assisting others, okay? I was a part of the search and rescue community for a really long time when I worked up north on Mount Washington. And the first rule of search and rescue was don't make the situation worse, okay? So anytime you were going to be a part of a rescue or help someone who needed it, you had to make sure you were well prepared, that you weren't going to be pulling from the resources they need by needing to be rescued yourself. You needed to be knowledgeable. These were all really critical skills in search and rescue. And I've pulled people off that mountain that have had frostbite blisters that like make your stomach turn. I've pulled people off that mountain that were so hypothermic they forgot the English language, okay? So it was really hard for me. At the end of 2019, last year, there was actually a call I had to make that was really hard that's along these same lines. We were driving back from visiting my family in another state, and it was a terrible freezing rain event while this happened. I know none of you are meteorologists, but it was 21 degrees and raining, okay? Really crazy freezing rain event. Like, that's one of the coolest freezing rain events I'd ever been in. We had about 1 inch of ice on our car. We're crawling along. We're on the highway going like 30 miles an hour. We go up a steep hill, and we go around a curve, and we get up to the top, and there are 3 cars that are rolled over on their backs. It had just happened. You could still see like the wheels spinning on one of them. One of the cars was on fire, and people are just starting to get out of their cars and climb out. And so I pull over to the side of the road, and we're looking and sort of assessing the situation, looking around, and realize this is a really dangerous place to be in. These people need help, but this road is extremely icy. There's about 3 or 4 other cars that had just seen this as well that are pulled over that are going to be able to help these people. What do we do here to help? And having been someone who's done search and rescue and helped people for a big part of my career, I looked at the two girls in the back seat that were sleeping and looking at these icy roads and conditions and said, I can't stay here. I can't help. I can't have another car that's going too fast come up behind us and wipe out all of these cars. I can't have them rear-end us and put my two little girls at risk. I had to say no. It was one of the hardest decisions that I ever had to make. So leading yourself and self-care are so, so extremely important. Everybody that you lead is going to emulate you. Your direct reports, your kids. So it's really, really important to make sure we're making the right choices. And we've heard all the catchy phrases, you know, like self-care or me time or treat yourself, right? For those who watch Parks and Rec, okay? I love that one, by the way. You know, but how do you prioritize it and how do you define it? So I struggle with this one more than any of the others. I'll be the first to admit it. It's really hard. So what is self-care for you? Maybe it's 5 minutes of quiet time. Maybe it's reading a book. Maybe it's a massage or a pedicure. But we live in an era where self-care is actually a weakness. Anyone here have those meetings that begin where everybody has a competition to see who got the least amount of sleep the night before? Okay? So one guy will be like, oh man, I was up till like 2 a.m. working. Another person will be like, that's nothing. I went to bed at 1 a.m. My kids were like up puking at 4 a.m. Okay? You're not the cool person to be like, my kids wake up at 5:30 a.m. so I go to sleep at 8:30 at night so I can get my full 8 hours. What's wrong with that? Okay? That's super important. This is what we actually need to be putting the value in. And we need to take care of ourselves because we actually have physical impacts in doing so. The cardiologist found that not exercising and not taking care of yourself was more dangerous for your health than smoking, diabetes, and there was another one, I can't find it on the list, and heart disease. So me time is extremely, extremely critical. So whatever taking care of yourself looks like, you need to find the time and you need to make the time. And you need to figure out in your life, what is your responsibility? What's not your responsibility? What can be delegated? What can only you do? What is something you do that other people can be doing instead? Are you scheduling it in your calendar? And if you are you canceling it because there's a last minute meeting that comes up or a last minute request and you're putting yourself as a last priority? I know I'm guilty of that one. Are you balancing too many calendars? Who here has a calendar for their work, for their kids' schedule, for their personal life? Multiple calendars. You can't squeeze 32 hours into a 24-hour day. It's math. I know I was bad at math, but it's math. That's basic, okay? You can't do it. You need one calendar. You are one person. You can't try to squeeze more out of a day than it already exists there. The reason you can't do that is because it leads to burnout. And burnout isn't what you think it is. Burnout isn't doing too much of something. Burnout is actually caused by what you're not doing. Burnout is caused by the lack of self-care, by the lack of time for yourself. Burnout is caused by the lack of positivity you're getting from your employer. Burnout is caused by the lack of time you get for your brain to reset. It's caused by the lack of time that someone listens to you. This is burnout, okay? And if you burn out, who are you going to take care of? A burnout employee can't care for customers. A burnout parent is going to resent their family. So stop the burnout before it occurs and take care of yourself. You need to put your oxygen mask on first before assisting others, because this person ain't taking care of nobody, right? Okay. So there we go. So thank you for coming with me on this delightful journey here. You know, the 7 ways that you could be not a bad boss, employee, parent, or spouse. You know, these are sort of my 7 rules. And don't look at this list and say, oh, I've got to do all 7 of these at once. Pick one. Start it for a week. Know that when you look at this list, some of these you're going to be better at than others. There's going to be some of these that you looked at this list and when I hit the number, you like sank back in your chair and you're like, I don't want to talk about that one, right? Because we know that's us, okay? So pick one, start small, don't do 7 at once, but do what you can today to do all of these things. And I think you're going to see a really big difference in all of your relationships and dealing with all your customers. So thank you all so much for the time. I'm happy to answer any questions, even awkward and painful.